Go. Let's go. Section 471. There are serious reasons for this type of concubinage. Concubinage. There are serious reasons for this type of concubinage. Some valid and some species. Species.
Specious.
Hello, my friends.
Hello.
Specious.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Today I am continuing to read that book,
Okay,
Love
okay.
and Marriage.
You carry it. We are listening to you.
Yeah, and I'm going to read too. Are you
Mhm.
ready?
Okay.
It's good. I read section 471. There are serious reasons for this type of concubinage, some valid and some species. Beside the just reasons that are justified, reasons to separate and therefore justified reasons to have a concubine, maybe concubine. Concubine. Uh, there are also important reasons that depend on the judgment and justice of the man himself. So they are noted here too. But the judgments of justice can be abused and made to appear just by rationalization. Abused.
Abused.
Abused. It's like offended. Can be abused and made up to appear just by rationalization. Rationalization. So these reasons are divided into the valid ones and the specious ones and discussed separately.
Oh, I see.
Mhm. Yeah. Section 472. The serious reasons that are valid are the just ones. To recognize these reasons only requires listing a few that are truly important, like no love for children and rejection of them on account of it. Interference. What is it? Interference.
Intemperance.
Intemperance. Intemperance. Intemperance, like maybe drunkenness too. Maybe intemperance in food,
Intemperance.
in eating. The intemperance, drunkenness, uncleanness, drunkenness,
Drunkenness.
drunkenness, uncleanness, shamelessness, eagerness, choose eagerness. What is eagerness?
Eagerness.
Eagerness. It's like desire, greed,
What's that?
eager.
Is that the Russian?
The translator. I mean, yeah,
Ah, yes, yeah. Oh, you learning, bro.
yeah. I'm
Good for you,
learning
bro.
English from the book. And
Ah,
if you
that is
want to read, You can read next section after me when I will finish this
Yeah,
section.
sure.
Mhm. See, it's like eagerness to split household secrets, quarreling, beating, getting revenge, being malicious, stealing, cheating, inner differences that cause bad feelings, demanding fulfillment of the marriage obligations, which makes a man as cold as a stone, addiction to magic and sorcery, extreme impiety, addiction. Yeah, addict. Like, yeah, it's like
It's
drug
like
addict.
smoke
Yeah,
Addiction.
addiction. Drug
addiction.
addiction. Mhm.
Yeah,
But addiction to magic and sorcery. Yeah, people can be addicted. Yeah, to
yeah.
magic.
People can be addicted to something
Hmm.
like drugs, for example.
And what is impiety? Extreme impiety.
Impiety.
Whoa, you have unique way to learn English, bro. I never saw people learn like you. Damn.
Did you know this word like
Yeah, I don't know. Imp, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Impiety.
Impiety.
yeah,
Impiety.
it's
Yeah, I
like
know.
Impiety.
wickedness,
Impiety.
disrespect.
Disrespect.
Yeah, my lexicon is little because I need to learn English from books to improve my lexicon.
Ah,
Extreme impiety.
impiety.
Extreme impiety. Extreme. Yeah, extreme impiety. And other things like that. hmm It's you can read if you want this
Yeah.
section.
My turn. Okay.
hmm
Another things like that. Oh, it's too zooming, bro. Like yeah. Okay. There's okay. There's there are also milder. What's milder? There are
Mild
also milder,
reason. It's like mild. It's like soft.
softer.
Yeah.
Milder.
Ah,
It's like it's
milder,
mild.
milder.
Milder.
Mhm.
Okay.
Soft.
Milder reasons that are valid. Oh no,
Valid.
valid. Okay, I know how to pronounce it. Important reason. They separate a spouse of from bed. Thought not from
Spouse.
the
It's spouse. Like marriage partner.
spouse.
Spouse.
Oh,
Spouse.
husband.
Husband.
Oh,
Husband
spouse.
and wife. hmm
Ah, spouse. Spouse from bed. Thought not from the home, such as the end of childbearing.
Bearing.
Childbearing. What is it? Childbearing.
It's like to give birth to children.
Oh,
Childbearing.
Yeah, birth of
childbearing.
children. Birth of
Oh, your English
children.
is
Pregnancy.
good, bro.
Mhm.
In a wife, due to advancing age and a resulting impatience with sexual love, refusing it, while the man's sex drive continues. And other things like that, which rational judgment sees the justice of, and which do not wound, is that? Wound,
Wood. It's a
wound,
wound. No,
wound,
no. Wound. Wound.
wound. What is it? Wound,
Wound.
wound, injury. Oh,
It's like injury. Like
injury.
this.
Okay,
Injury.
Injury.
okay,
Yeah.
injury. Wound. The conscience.
Cons-
What was
conscience. It's like
conscience?
mind. It's like conscience. Conscience is like your inner voice. inner voice.
Oh, yeah, I see.
You can
Once you.
hear if you do bad things, for example, you can hear your inner voice, and that inner voice is your conscience, like this.
Oh, it's a conscience. Okay,
Mhm.
right.
Okay, I read next.
Yep.
But the serious reasons that are specious are the ones that are not just but yet appear to be just. You can tell these from the real, important reasons listed above. They can seem just, if not duly, 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 duly,
Julie.
duly. It's like correctly. Duly examined, and yet are unjust reasons like the time of abstinence. Abstinence.
Abstinence.
Abstinence. I cannot explain. Abstinence. Required after birth, wife's temporary afflictions, the waste of sperm on the that and other accounts, the polygamy permitted the Israelites and other similar reasons with no basis in justice. Men fabricate them after they become cold when unchaste passions have taken away their married love and made fools of them, with the notion that married love is illicit love. When these men take up with concubine, concubine,
Concubine.
yeah, concubine, they make these counterfeit and false reasons valid and genuine to save face. And they usually spread rumors about their wives, which their social friends sympathetically support and celebrate. Sympathetically.
Sympathetically.
Yeah, sympathetically. Support and celebrate. Mhm. Who wants to read next section? Maybe. Maybe.
Wait,
Mhm.
I wanna ask you which app do you use for to know the pronunciation of the words?
It's a reader application for Android.
Is
You can
is
see.
is is easy? Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
is free?
it's free. Yeah. Okay. If I will continue.
Okay,
Those who
I'll read
have
if you want.
go ahead.
Those who have a concubine this way for legitimate, just, and really important reasons may have love for marriage at the same time. Saying that they can have love for marriage at the same time means they can keep this love hidden away within themselves. For this does not die out in the one whom it is in, but it is inactive. Here are the reasons why married love stays in those who prefer marriage to having a concubine and go into concubinage for the reasons noted above. This type of concubinage does not oppose married love. It is not a parting of the ways, for it only covers it up, and this covering comes off for them after death. This kind of concubinage does not
Con-
oppose the
con-
love
it's
in marriage.
concubinage, I think. Concubinage.
Concubinage, it
Concubinage.
means
Concubinage.
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 concubinage. Okay, all right. Does not oppose the love in marriage. According to what was pointed out above, this kind of concubinage is permissible when done for legitimate, right, and important real reasons. All right. You want me to continue?
Yeah, go on.
This kind of concubinage is not a parting of the ways with the love in marriage, because when legitimate or just or important valid reasons come between, persuade and force it, married love is not taken away from the marriage, but only interrupted, and love that is interrupted and not taken away remains in one under its influence. It is the same as with someone who holds a job that he loves and is kept away from it by company, by shows, or by travel. Yet his love for the job is not lost, and it is the same with someone who loves fine wine. When he drinks inferior wine, he does not lose his eager taste for the fine wine. This kind of concubinage only covers married love up, because love for a concubine is worldly and married love is spiritual. And a worldly love covers a spiritual one when it interrupts it. The lover does not know that this is so, because a
What is inferior?
inferior
Inferior.
means bad.
Inferior.
It's like worst, bad wine.
Worst, yeah,
Interesting.
bad. Yeah.
Inferior.
Inferior.
Because it's inferior and it's like a fine wine and inferior wine.
Yeah, low quality wine, yeah.
Because
A spiritual love is not felt per se, but through the worldly plane. And it seems like a delight with a blessing from heaven in it, but a worldly love per se is felt as just the delight. This covering comes after death, because then the person changes from worldly to spiritual, and instead of a material body, he enjoys one made of substance. And its natural delight is intensified by spiritual. I have heard that this is so by consulting with certain ones in the spiritual world. Even a king who had a concubine for important valid reasons in the natural world.
Thank you. I will read next. While this concubinage continues, sexual union with the wife is not permissible. The reason is that then married love, which per se is spiritual, chaste, pure, and holy, becomes worldly, is degraded. Degraded.
Degraded.
And degraded. Degraded, decays. Decays.
Decays.
It's like destruction. Decays and is lost in this way. So for this love to be kept safe, having a concubine for important valid reasons has to be done with one woman and not with two at once. Who is next? The following story is added to these articles. I heard a young spirit recently from the world boasting about illicit affairs and wanting to win compliments for being more masculine than others, and among his arrogant boast he poured out these words. What's more dismal? What is it? Dismal.
Dismal.
Dismal. Dismal, like sad. Horrible. Horrible. Dismal. What is more dismal than to jail your love and live alone with one human? To jail, like prison. Yeah.
Jail.
To put into jail like this. To jail you love and live alone with one woman. And what's more delightful than to set love free? Who doesn't get tired of one woman and get ex- excited? Excited.
Excited.
Excited. It's like delighted. And get excited by many women. What's sweeter than promiscuous freedoms, variety, deflorations, deceiving husbands, and the hypocrisies of an affair? Hypocrisies.
Hypocrisies.
Hypocrisies of an affair. Don't the things you get by cunning? What is cunning?
Cunning.
Cunning. Mhm. It's like cleverness, cunning. By cunning, tricks, and secrecy, give deep down satisfaction to your mind. When the bystanders heard that, they said, "Don't talk that way. You don't know where you are and with whom. You just got here. Hell is under your feet and heaven is over your head. You are in the world halfway between the two now, called the world of spirits. All the people who leave the world come and are gathered here and are examined to find out what they are like and are prepared, the bad ones for hell and the good for heaven. Maybe you still remember from ministers in the world that fornicators and harlots are thrown down into hell and the chaste married people are taken up into heaven. The newcomer laughed at these admonitions. Admonitions.
Admonitions.
Admonitions. It's like instruction. Saying, what is heaven and what is hell? Isn't heaven where someone is free and isn't someone who is allowed to love as many women as he wants free? And isn't hell where someone is a slave? And isn't a person who has to stick to one woman a slave? But an angel looking down out of heaven heard that, interrupted his speech to keep him from going any further in profaning marriage, and said, come up here, and I'll show you in real life what heaven is and what hell is and what it is like for confirmed fornicators, and pointed out the way. He went up. When he was let in, he was first led into a paradisal garden. Paradisal garden, where there were fruit trees and flowers that filled the mind with the joys of life due to their beauty, pleasantness, and fragrance. He admired them greatly when he saw them. Admired.
Admired.
It's like respected, delighted. He admired them greatly when he saw them. But he was using his outward sight that he had used in the world when he saw things like that, and in that sight he was rational. In his inner vision, however, where fornication had the leading role and occupied every bit of his thought, he was not rational. So his outer vision was closed and his inner opened. When it was, he said, "What do I see now? It's straw and dry wood, isn't it? And now what is straw? Straw.
Stree. Stree.
But transcription is like straw. Maybe
Stree man.
tree man. Okay, tree. Maybe straw and tree. Is straw and dry wood, isn't it? And now what do I notice? It is a bad smell, isn't it? Where are paradisal things now? The angel said, "They are nearby and present, but they don't appear before your inner vision, which is fornicators." So here it turns heavenly things into hellish ones and only sees their opposites. Every person has an inner mind and an outer mind, thus inner vision and outer vision. In evil people, the inner mind is foolish and the outer one is wise. And in good people, the inner mind is wise, and on account of this, the outer one is too. And in the spiritual world, a person sees objects according to the way his mind is. After this, by a power given to him, the angel closed the young man's inner sight and opened his outer sight and led him through gates toward the center of population. And he saw magnificent palaces of alabaster, marble, and various precious stones with colonnades by them and columns all around, topped and covered with marvelous decorations and ornaments. Maybe ornaments. Maybe.
Ornaments.
Yeah, ornaments. When he saw it, he was amazed and said, "What am I seeing? I see splendors of splendor and the very state of the art of architecture." And then the angel again closed his outer vision and opened his inner vision, which was evil because horribly given to fornication. Horribly.
Horribly.
Mhm. Terribly, horribly given to fornication. When that happened, he cried out, saying, "Now what am I seeing? Where am I? Where are the palaces and splendors now? I see rubble, debris,
Debris.
debris, 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 and gaping holes." He was soon returned to his outer vision and taken into one of the palaces, and he saw the decorations on the doors, windows, walls, and ceilings, especially the furniture, furniture,
Furniture.
mhm, furniture that had heavenly designs on it and around it made of gold and precious stones. One could not describe it with any words or draw it with any art, for it was beyond the spoken ideas and beyond the concepts of the arts. When he saw these, he cried out again, saying, "These are splendor itself, which eyes have never seen." But then his inner vision was opened, and his outer vision was closed, as before, and he was asked what he saw now. "Just walls," he answered, "here of rushes there of straw, and thereof much wood, rushes.
Rushes.
Rushes. It's like tree, big tree. It's like not tree. It's like grass, big grass. And thereof much wood, much wood.
Matchwood.
Mhm. But he was brought into his outer state of mind once more, and young women were brought who were beauties because they were the images of heavenly feelings, and they talked to him in the gentle voice of their feelings. And then his face changed because of what he saw and heard, and he shifted back by himself from his outside to his inside, which was a fornicator's. This inside could not bear anything that had to do with heavenly love, and vice versa. Nothing having to do with heavenly love could bear what was inside, so they disappeared for each other. The young women from the man's side, and the man from the young woman's side. After this, the angel informed him why the conditions of the things he saw and changed back and forth. I can tell, he said, that you were twisted, two-sided. What is it? No. Yeah,
Two-sided.
two-sided. That you were two-sided in the world you came from. One person on the inside and another on the outside, a civil, moral, and reasonable person on the outside, but neither civil nor moral for reasonable on the inside, because you were a fornicator and an adulterer. That kind of people can see heavenly things when they go up into heaven, so long as they stick to their outer personalities there. But when the things inside them are opened up, they see hellish things in place of the heavenly ones. But you need to know that here everyone's outside is gradually closed off and what is inside is opened up. People are made really for heaven or for hell in this way. The evil of illicit sex pollutes the insides of your mind more than any other evil, so you can't help being carried down to the filth of your love, and these are in hell, where the caverns stink of excrements. Who can't reason out then in the spiritual world anything unchaste and lascivious is impure and unclean, so that nothing fouls and pollutes a person more and brings something hellish into him. So be careful not to brag. Brag.
Brag.
It's like boast, bragging. Not to brag about your love affairs anymore, that they make you more masculine than others. I'm warning you that you are going to be so impotent. Important. Important.
Impotent.
Impotent. Impotent. Impotent. What's the difference between important and impotent? Going to be so impotent that you'll hardly know where your manhood is. That is what happens to people who boast about the potency of illicit sex. When he heard this, he went down and returned to the world of spirits and his former companions, and he talked modestly and chastely with them, but not for long. modestly. Mm-hmm.
Modestly.
It's like humbly, modestly. Mhm. Okay, maybe comments? Any comments before we read next chapter? Chapter 21. Mm-hmm. Adultery, its types and levels. Mhm. Maybe someone wants to read this section 478.
Okay, I'll read.
Go ahead.
Adultery, its types and levels. No one who forms an opinion about adultery just from outward factors can tell that there is anything bad in it, because in outward appearances it is like marriage. When you mention inward factors to people who judge by outward factors and tell them that the outward factors get their good or evil from the inward ones, they say to themselves, what inward factors? Who sees them? This is going beyond the range of anyone's understanding, isn't it? They're like people who take every pretense of good for genuine good intention, and who judge a person's wisdom by the elegance of his talk, or who estimate the man himself by his fine clothes and his driving an expensive carriage, not by his inner character, which has to do with discernment based on affection for good. It is just the same as judging the fruit of a tree or anything edible from just its look and feel. Instead of judging its worth by taste and knowledge, this is what everyone unwilling to notice the inner dimensions of a person does. This is why so many people today have the insanity to see nothing bad in adulteries, and in fact put them together in the same bed with marriages, that is, make them just alike, and only
What,
because
what is it like? Like, I know what is
like something that are the same, two things that are same,
Uh,
similar.
alike and like are the same thing, yeah. But what's the difference between them? It's like,
Alike means similar. Like, if when you say like, you have to give an example at the end of it. Like
mhm,
something.
okay, thank you.
And
And
only
only,
because of an appearance of outward similarity. The following evidence from experience clearly demonstrates that this is true. Angels once called together several hundred people from the European world who were very talented, learned, and wise. The angels asked them about the difference between marriages and adulteries, and urged them to call on their intellectual powers. After consultation, all but 10 answered that public law makes the only difference for the sake of some benefit that people can recognize, to be sure, but that is served through jurisprudence. Then they were asked if they saw anything good in marriage and anything evil in adultery. They answered, no, no measurable evil and good. Asked if they saw any sin there, they said, where? It's the same act, isn't it? The angels were amazed at this answer and cried,
this, how to pronounce this word? Ju,
uh,
Jurisprudence.
juris, juris,
jurisprudence.
jurisprudence.
It means judicial
Jurisprudence.
practice.
Juris, jurish or juris? Juris,
Mm.
juris,
Jurisprudence.
juris,
Jurisprudence.
jurisprudence. This answer and cried.
Yeah, you can turn the
out.
page. Cried out, "Oh, what gross times!" The wise hundreds turned to each other when they heard that, and laughing among themselves, they said, "This is grossness. Is there any wisdom that can convince us that loving someone else's wife deserves eternal damnation?" But the first chapter of this part about illicit love and married love being opposite demonstrated that adultery is a spiritual evil and therefore for moral
What
for
gross?
therefore a moral gross means
Gross.
bad.
Gross. Mm. In the sense of what gross times?
Gross means bad and something that is bad. I mean the worst.
Ah, mhm. In this sense is bad. Gross times. But a lot of synonyms like total, big.
Gross means something that makes you vomit.
Mm, Thank you. And therefore immoral.
And therefore a moral and civil evil and diametrically against the wisdom of reason. Also, that adulterous love is from hell and returns there, and married love is from heaven and returns there. But every evil, like every good, has its spread and its height. Its types go according to its spread and its levels according to its height. So, for adulteries to be known in both dimensions, they're going to be examined first in their types and then in their levels, which is done in this order. Number one, there are three types of adultery: simple, double, and triple. Two, simple adultery is adultery of an unmarried man with another's wife, or an unmarried woman with another's husband. Number three, double adultery is adultery of a husband with another's wife or the other way around. Number four, triple adultery is adultery with blood relations. Number five, there are four levels of adultery: accusation, guilt, and after that, blame for them depends on the level of the adultery. Number six, adulteries of the first level are adulteries from ignorance committed by people who do not yet or cannot consult their intellect and in his way curb them. Number seven, the adulteries committed by these people
Curb.
curb them.
Curb.
It's like restriction in this sense, yeah. Restrain, restrict,
Mhm.
suppress,
Suppress.
suppress. By these
Yeah.
people,
People are mild. Number eight, adulteries of the second level are adulteries of passion, done by people who can indeed consult their intellect, but not at the time because of the curriculum, but because of
circums.
circumstances. Number nine, people are to blame for these adulteries precisely as their intellect does or does not favor them afterwards. Number 10, adulteries of the third level are rationalized adulteries committed by people who intellectually demonstrate that adulteries are not sinful wrongs. Number 11, the adulteries committed by these people are serious and the people are to blame for them according to their being confirmed. Number 12, adulteries of the fourth level are intentional adulteries committed by people who represent them as lawful, acceptable, and not even worth intellectual consideration. Number 13, the adulteries that these people commit are the most serious and are attributed to them as purposeful evils. and they adhere as guilt. 14. Adulteries of the third and fourth level are sinful wrongs to the extent and in the way that intellect and will are involved in them, whether actually committed or not. Number 15. Adulteries by willful purpose and adulteries by intellectual.
Adhere.
Here, guilt.
Adhere.
Observe, follow,
Observe, follow.
join.
By intellectual.
By intellectual conviction make people worldly, sense-oriented, and physical-minded. Should I continue?
Yeah, go on. It's your section.
Number 16. So much so that these people finally reject everything having to do with the church and religion. Number 17. They still flourish in human rationality like anyone else. Number 18. But they use that rationality in outward activities, yet abuse it inwardly. Now comes the explanation of these topics.
Flourish.
Flourish means
Flourish.
they blossom. Blossom. They.
It's about flowers. Yeah, blossom.
Here it means like it becomes
It follows from flowers. Yeah, like prosperity. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Because the same root. Yeah, like flowers and flourish. Yeah, we can say.
Here it means it thrives. It becomes obvious or something.
If successfully developed. Yeah, to become successfully developed. Okay, explanations.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Who wants to read next section? Maybe 479. Okay. Go ahead.
There are three types of adultery: simple, double, and triple. The creator of the universe divided each and everything that he created into general types, and each type into different varieties, and he subdivided each variety and each particular kind the same way, and so on, so that infinity would be represented in the continual variety of qualities. Thus the creator of the universe divided the good things and the truth that go with them, and similarly the bad things and the falsities that go with them, once they had sprung up. Things brought to light in the book Heaven and Hell, published in London in 1758, may establish that he divided each and everything in the spiritual world into types, varieties, and particular kinds, and that he gathered all good and true things together in heaven, and all evil and false things in hell, and arranged the latter diametrically opposite to the former. The fate of people after death, heaven is for the good and hell is for the bad, tells us that in the natural world he has divided and does divide the good and true things and the evil and false things in people, and those the people themselves. Now, since all things having to do with good and all things having to do with evil are divided into kinds, species, and so forth, by the same token.
I think it's species. You said species, like species.
Species.
Species. It's like types, kinds. By the same token.
Token marriages are divided into them, and similarly the opposite of marriages, which are adulteries.
Thank you. Simple adultery is adultery of an unmarried man with another's wife or an unmarried woman with another's husband. Adultery here and in what follows means the illicit love that is opposite to marriage. It is opposite because it violates the life covenant settled between the partners. Mangles. Mangles. What is it? Mangles?
Mangles.
Mangles like cripple. Ruin. Mangles their love, pollutes it, and shuts off the union begun at the time of engagement and confirmed in the beginning of the marriage. For the married love of a man with one wife unites their souls after the agreement and covenant. Adultery does not dissolve this union because it cannot be dissolved, but closes it off just like someone stopping up a spring where it bubbles out, thus stopping its stream and filling the cistern with contaminated, smelly waters. In the same way, adultery uh, it's dissolved, cannot be dissolved,
Dissolved.
dissolved. It's like diluted, divorced,
Diluted.
diluted, diluted, and
Divorced.
divorced, diluted. It cannot be dissolved. Ad- Adultery plasters up and closes off the love in marriage, whose source is a union of souls. When this is plugged, 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 maybe
Plugged.
plugged, plugged, connected, inserted. When this is plugged up, adulterous love rises up from below. As it grows, it makes the former love physical, and this rises up against married love and destroys it. This is where the opposition of adultery and marriage comes from. Who is next?
Read.
Yeah, go ahead.
To make known once again how dull this age is in that its wise people do not see anything sinful in adultery, as an as angels disclose already in number 478 above. I am adding this account. There were certain spirits who used to infest me with unusual skill due to practice in their bodily life. And they did it with quite a gentle, almost wave like influence, like the usual influence of good spirits. But I noticed cunning and things like that in them to entice and deceive. I finally talked with one of them who I was told.
Told. Cunning. I forgot what is cunning.
Cunning is like
Cunning.
It's like cleverness, yeah, cleverness. Cunningly. And infest is like infect, yeah, infest.
mhm,
Yeah, infect.
Infest.
Infect, infest. Entice and entice.
entice is
Entice.
them deceive.
Tempt and deceive. Entice.
Had been the leader of an army when he lived in the world. I could tell that there were 30 ideas in his thinking, so I spoke with him in spiritual language, with symbols. It expresses ideas fully and many at a time. He said he thought nothing of adultery in his bodily life in the former world, but I was able to tell him that adulteries are against divine law, even if they do not seem that way. In fact, seem law lawful to people like that. On account of the pleasure they take and their conviction due to the pleasure. Also that can know it from this, that marriage is the nursery of the human race and thus also the kingdom of heavens, nursery and is therefore not to be violated, but held sacred. And also from this, that the love in marriage comes down from the Lord through heaven, and that love for each other, which is the mainstay of
Genuine.
genuine.
Mm,
uh,
Mainstay. Sorry.
oh yeah, mainstay of
Mainstain of
heaven.
heaven. Of heaven. Yeah. Mainstain. What is it? Mainstain.
Mainstay.
Mainstay.
It's like,
Stronghold. No.
yeah, main
Main,
support.
main support. Mainstay.
It's like pillar, basis, stronghold, mainstay of heaven.
Derives from the love as a parent, which he should have known, being in spiritual world in a position of to notice. And you can tell them from this that when the adulterers were merely approach heavenly communities, they notice their own heavy odor and fling themselves away from there toward hell. At the least, he might know that violating marriage is against divine laws, against the civil laws of all countries, also against the genuine
This word is like marriages, I think. Marriages.
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 Yeah,
Marriage.
marriages.
All right.
And what is fleeing?
Fling is like flirt.
Fling.
It's like throw, rush, fleeing away.
All right.
Against the genuine.
Themselves. Life, light of reason, and thus against the law of nations, because it is against both divine and human order, besides many other things. But he answered that he had not thought about things like that in his former life. He wanted to argue about whether it was so, but he was told that there is no room for arguments about the truth, because arguments defend the pleasures of flesh against the pleasures of spirit, and he knew nothing about what spiritual pleasures are like. And he was told that he should think about the things that he had been told first because they were true, or think from the principle which is well known in the world, that no one should do to someone else what he doesn't want someone else to do to him. And if someone deceive in this way his own wife whom he loved, as you do in the beginning of every marriage, then while in a state of rage about it, would not be himself also have denounced adulteries if he spoke his mind. And besides, because he has an aggressive nature, he would protest against it more than others, would he not, to the point of damning into hell. And because he was the leader of an army with active troops available, he would either have done away with the adulterer or thrown the adulteress out of his house to keep it from being a reproach to him.
Thank you very much. Who wants to read next section? 482. Mhm. Double adultery, or is adultery of a husband with another's wife, or the other way around. This adultery is called double because two committed. Each of them violates the marriage vow, so it is twice as serious as the former kind. It's said above that the married love of one man with one wife joins their souls after the agreement and vow, and that this union is married love itself in its origin, and that adultery closes this and stops it up like the bubbling and the flow of a spring. It is clear that the two people's souls join when love for the other sex is restricted to one woman or one man or the other sex, which happens when the young woman totally pledges.
Pledges.
Mhm. It's like promise, obligation, vow, oath. Totally pledges herself to the young man, and vice versa. The young man totally pledges himself to the young woman because the lives of each join together, and so their souls do, because these are the origins of life. This union of souls is possible only in monogamous marriages or marriage of one man with one wife, but not in polygamous, monogamous and polygamous, but not in polygamous marriages or marriage of one man with more than one woman, because in these love is split up and in the others it is united. Married love is spiritual, holy, and pure in this highest temple for the reason that every person's soul is heavenly by its origin, so it receives influence directly from the Lord, for it receives from Him a marriage of love and wisdom, or of good and truth, and this influence makes a person and distinguishes him from the animals. From this union of souls, married love, which is in its spiritual holiness and purity, in this union, flows down into the life of your whole body and fills it with blessed pleasures as long as its stream stays open, which happens in those whom the Lord makes spiritual. From the Lord's words that it is lawful to put away a wife and take another only because of adultery. It is clear that only adultery closes and stops up the seed, source or spring of married love, and its stream, and also from these words there, that he who takes the divorced wife commits adultery. So when that pure holy spring is stopped up, as said above, it becomes packed with foulness. Becomes packed with foulness.
Foulness.
It's like abomination, foulness, filth. Becomes packed with foulness, like a precious stone packed in dung, or a loaf of bread full of vomit, things which are totally opposite to the purity and holiness of that spring or married love. From this opposition comes marital coldness, and in keeping with this, a lascivious pleasure in illicit love, which willingly destroys itself. This is an evil of sin because the holiness is covered up, so its flow into your body is thwarted.
Thwarted.
Thwarted. Thwarted. Thwarted is like destroy. Mhm. Thwarted and profane thing comes in place of it, whose flow into a body is opened. This changes a person from heavenly to hellish. Mhm. Maybe any comments? Or maybe someone wants to read next section 483.
Okay, I'll read. I add to these observations some things from the spiritual world that are worth recording. I heard that some married men take pleasure in fornicating with inexperienced women or virgins, some with women who are not virgins or prostitutes, some with married women or wives, some with women from the nobility, and some with women who are not highborn. I have been convinced that this is so by many people from different countries in that world. While I was thinking about the variety of these passions, I asked if there are any who get all their pleasure with other people's wives and none with unmarried women. So, to show me that there are many people from a certain kingdom were brought to me, they were obliged to speak according to their lusts. They said that for them the only delight and joy was and is to commit adultery with other people's wives, and that they seek beautiful ones from them for themselves and bribe them with rewards sized according to their wealth, and they usually agree on the price with the woman alone. I asked why they did not hire unmarried women. They said that to them this is low class, that it is cheap in itself, and there is no pleasure in it. I asked if the wives go back to their husbands afterwards and live with them. They answered that either they do not or else they return cold because they have been made into prostitutes. Next, I asked in all seriousness if they had ever thought or thought now that this is double adultery, because they do it while they have wives, and that adultery like that wipes out all spiritual good in a person. But most of those who were present laughed at these words, saying, "What is spiritual good?" But I held my ground, saying, "What is more detestable than to mix your soul with a husband's soul in his wife? Don't you know that a man's soul is in his semen?" At this, they turned away and muttered, "What does it hurt there?" I finally said, "Even if you're not afraid of divine laws, aren't you afraid of the civil laws?" They answered, "No, we're not. We're only afraid of certain people in the preaching profession. But in their company we conceal it, and if we can't, we treat them right." Later, I saw them separated into groups, and some of the groups driven into hell.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Your reading is very good. Is English your first language?
Oh, it's not my
No?
first.
But
No.
your reading is very well, and lexicon too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to read next section? 484. What is muttered? Muttered.
Muttered.
Muttered. It's like chatter. Chattering.
Chatter.
Bubble too. Muttered. Who is next? Section 484.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
triple adultery is adultery with blood relations. This adultery is called triple because it is 3 times as serious as the first 2 kinds. The blood relations or I don't know this word.
What is it here?
Vestiges.
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 It's like remnant, rudiment, footprint. Vestiges.
Vestiges of your body that are not to be approached are listed in Leviticus.
Leviticus.
Or Leviticus. There are inner and outward reasons why these adulteries are 3 times as serious as the first. The inward reasons come from their corresponding to a violation of the spiritual marriage, which is the marriage of the Lord and the church, and of good and truth from that. The outward reasons are for the sake of protection against man's becoming an animal. But here there's no room to go ahead and explain these reasons.
There are 4 levels of adultery: accusation, guilt, and after death. Blame for them depends on the level of the adultery. These levels are not types, but they apply to each of the types and make the difference in them between more or less evil or good. Here, whether an adultery of any kind should be considered mild or serious because of circumstances and contingencies. Contingencies. What is it?
Contingencies.
Contingencies. It's like accident, incident.
Incident.
Incident, contingencies. It's like maybe contingencies. It is well known that circumstances and contingencies make a difference in everything. Yet the person considers them one way by his rational lights, a judge another way by law, and the Lord another way by the person's state of mind. This is why I said accusation, guilt, and after death blame. For people make accusations of them by their rational lights, a judge condemns them by the law, and the Lord laws blame for them according to the person's state of mind. Without any explanation, these 3 things can be seen to be very different, for by rational convictions according to the circumstances and contingencies, a person can excuse someone whom a judge sitting in judgment cannot excuse under the law. And also a judge can excuse someone who, after death, is condemned. The reason is that the judge gives a sentence according to what was done, but after death, each one is judged according to the intentions of his will and therefore his understanding of it, and according to his intellectual convictions and therefore his will. A judge does not see either of these things, and yet both kinds of judgment are just, one for the good of civil society, the other for the good of heavenly society. Mhm. Who is next?
Mm, I read.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Adulteries of the first level are adulteries from ignorance, committed by people who do not yet or cannot consult their intellect, and in this way curb them all evils, and therefore adultery too, per se, have to do with the inner and outer person at the same time. The inner intends them, and the outer does them. So, whatever the inner person is like in things done by the outer, that is what the deeds are like in themselves. But the inner person and his intention does not appear to people's eyes. So, in court, everyone is judged by deeds and words according to established law and its requirements. A judge should also consider the inner intent of the law. But examples make it clear if a growing boy who does not yet know that adultery is more evil than fornication happens to commit adultery. If a very simple minded person does it. If someone deprived of clear judgment by disease does it, or someone who has temporary insanity, as some do, and at the time is in a state that the truly insane are in, and also if it is done in wild drunkenness, and so on. Clearly, in inner person or mind is not present in the outer at the time, much more than in someone irrational. Anybody who is rational this
Discusses.
discusses this people's adulteries um, according to those circumstances. Yet the same person, sitting as a judge, still blames and punishes them by law. But after death, the adulteries are blamed on them on the basis of the presence, quality, and skill of the intellect in the people's intent.
Mhm. Thank you. Who is next? Who wants to read?
AI,
Go ahead.
the adulteries committed by these people are mild. This stands from what was said above, without more explanation, for obviously the nature of every act of everything generally depends the circumstances, and
Depends
this
depends on the circumstances.
depends the circumstances, and this make it mild or serious. But adulteries on this level are mild when they are committed, and they also remain mild in so far as a man or woman abstains from them over the course of life afterwards for the reasons that they are evil against God or evil against one's neighbor or evils against the civic good or for the for the see for this reasons. There are evils against reason. On the other hand, these also count as more serious
This
adult.
word, this is one word.
Yeah,
The
that's
these.
confusing.
Okay.
This also
These.
count.
These as more serious. adulteries.
Adulteries if the people do not abstain from them, for one of the reasons mentioned. This is so by divine law. But a person cannot forgive or condemn or accuse someone of them and judge them as mild or serious on the basis of these circumstances, because they do not appear to his eyes, in fact, are not for him to judge. So this means that they are accused and blamed in this way after that.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Adulteries of the second level are adulteries of passion committed by people who can indeed consult their intellect, but not at the time because of the circumstances. In the beginning, there are two things that struggle with, with each other in a person who changes from worldly to spiritual, which are commonly called the spirit and flesh. Married love belongs to spirit, and adulterous love belongs to flesh. So there is also a struggle between these. If married love wins, it masters and subdues the adulterous love, which is done by removing it. But if it happens that bodily passion exci- excited is excited, I forgot this word, excited. Excited is like delighted, excited. For example, I am so excited. Bodily passion is excited to search. What is it? Search. Search. It's like a splash, spike, wave. Excited to search beyond that one's spirit can hold back by reason. It creates an inverted situation, and the search of passion swamps the spirit with such enticements that it is no longer in control of its reason, and therefore of its judgment. This is the meaning of second degree adultery done by people who can indeed consult their intellect, but not at the moment because of the circumstances. But examples are illustrative. For instance, if a whorish wife captures a man's mind by cunning, enticing him into a bedroom for exciting him until control of his judgment escapes, and more so if at the same time she threatens him, threatens, threatens, threatens. It's like, yeah, it's like frighten, threatens. She threatens him with shame if he does not. Equally, if some whorish wife is good at trickery or excites the man with up, up, aprodicials, I don't know this word and I cannot translate this word because it's separated on 2 pages. Up,
I think it's pronounced aphrodisiacs.
aphrodisiacs. What does it mean?
I don't know the meaning though. Sorry.
Yeah,
Let me
because I
see.
cannot translate it
I'm
because it's
searching.
like, yeah, it's like,
Okay, I'm
let's see.
searching. An aphrodis. Oh, and now I can't pronounce it. An aphrodisiac is a substance that increases sexual desire.
Ah, Okay.
It's like
Got it.
apro
Aphrodisiacs, yeah? Aphrodisiacs.
Aphrodisiacs.
Aphrodisiacs. Okay, aphrodisiacs. hmm Copy that. Aphrodisiacs to the point where the uh, and enthusiasm like this.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. Enthusiasm. It's enthusiasm. Okay.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm of his body takes away his intellect's freedom to think. Similarly, if a man leads someone else's wife on by pleasing enticements until her aroused desire is no longer under her control, and other cases like that, reason agrees and assents. Assents.
Assents.
It's like approval, sanction. Reason agrees and assents that these contingencies and others like them. Contingencies. I forgot
Contingencies.
contingencies. Accident. Contingencies. And others like them soften the seriousness of adultery and swing.
Swing.
Swing. Like shake. Swing. The assignment of blame for it onto the milder side for the seduced man or woman. Next, the blame for this degree of adultery. Okay. Who is next?
If no one's going to read, I will read. Uh, People are to blame for these adulteries precisely as their intellect does or does not favor them off afterwards. A person takes on evils and makes them his own to the extent that he intellectually favors them. Favor is agreement, and agreement puts him in a frame of mind to love them. It is this way with adulteries that were originally committed without consent, and that come to be relished.
Relished. For example, it's like
Relished.
Yeah, it's like
Relished.
enjoy.
Yeah, relished.
Relished.
For example,
It is the opposite.
I relished in it.
Thanks. It is the opposite if they are not relished if afterwards. The reason is that evils or adulteries committed with the intellectual blind or committed due to the body's desire. These come close to being like the instincts that animals have. In a person, intellect is indeed present when he does evils, but with inactive or dead force, not with active or living force. From these observations, the concept emerges by itself that acts like that are only blamed on a person in the measure that he does or does not relish them afterwards. Attributing here means blame after death and a judgment from it, which is done in keeping with the state of the person's spirit, but it does not mean an accusation by a person before a judge. This is not done in keeping with the state of his spirit, but his body in the act. If these states were not different things, whoever is acquitted in the world would be absolved after death, and whoever is condemned there would be damned. and therefore there would be no hope for salvation for him.
Mhm. Who is next? Section 490.
Okay. Adulteries of the third level are rationalized adulteries committed by people who intellectually demonstrate that adulteries are not sinful wrongs. One knows that there is will and intellect, for in speech we say, I want this and I understand this. Yet we do not distinguish between them, but make one the same as the other. The reason is that everyone reflects only on things that have to do with thought due to intellect and not on things that have to do with love due to will. For these do not appear in the open like intellectual matters, and yet someone who doesn't differentiate between will and intellect cannot distinguish between evil and good, and therefore can certainly not know anything about the guilt of a sin. But who doesn't know that good and truth are two separate things, like love and wisdom, and who cannot conclude from that, when he is in rational light, that in a person there are two faculties that receive good and truth differently and assign them to themselves, and that one faculty is will and the other intellect. For that reason, what your what your will receives and in turn puts forth is called good, and what your intellect receives is called truth. For what will loves and does is called good, and what intellect notices and thinks is called truth. Now the first part of this book with the marriage of good and truth, and there are many things were mentioned about will and intellect and the various attributes and qualities of each. Even those who have not thought about any difference
How
between
did you read this word?
notice, or is it
I,
notice?
I think it's notices.
Or
Listen.
notice.
Notices.
Notices. It's a lot. Notices. You said like notice. It's like one. Yeah, it's notices. Any difference between?
Between intellect and will, I may say, could grasp those statements, for human reason is such that it understands truth due to their light, even if it has not seen the difference before. Therefore, to make the difference between intellect and will clearly noticeable, I bring out some things for the purpose of making known what adulteries of reason or intellect are like, and afterwards what adulteries of will are like. These items will serve to give an idea about them. Will alone doesn't act by itself, but whatever it does through intellect. And on the other hand, intellect alone doesn't act by itself, but whatever it does due to will. Will flows into intellect, but not intellect into will, but intellect teaches what is good and bad, and consults will to choose between these two and do will's pleasure. After this a double connection is formed, one where will acts from the inside and intellect from the outside. The other where intellect acts from inside and will from outside. This is how reason's adulteries dealt with here are distinguished from will's adulteries dealt with later. They are distinguished because one is worse than the other. For reasons adulteries are less serious than will's adulteries. The reason is that in reason's adultery intellect acts from inside and will from outside, but in will's adultery will acts from inside and intellect from outside. And will is the person himself, intellect the person due to will, and what acts within rules over what acts from outside.
Thank you. The adulteries committed by these people a series according to their being confirmed. Only intellect confirms, and when it confirms, it wins your will over, draws it up around itself, and thus makes it obedient. Obedient. Mhm,
Obedient.
mhm. Subordinate. Mhm. Submissive. Obedient. Confirmation are made through arguments that the mind summons either from his higher reaches or from its lower reaches. If from the higher reaches, which are in touch with heaven, it confirms marriages and condemns adulteries, but if from its lower reaches, which are in touch with the world, it confirms adulteries and makes little of marriages. Anyone can confirm bad just the same as good, and likewise falsity and truth, and confirming evil seems more pleasant than confirming good, and confirming falsity more brilliant than confirming truth. The reason is that confirmation of evil and falsity draws its conclusions from the joys, pleasures, appearances, and fallacies of the bodily senses, but confirmation of good and true things draws its reasons from an area above the sensory qualities of the body. Now, since you can confirm bad and false things just the same as good and true ones, and since intellect gets your will on its side when it makes its confirmation, and will together with intellect makes up your mind, as a result, the makeup of a human mind is in keeping with their confirmations. It is turned toward heaven if its confirmations are pro marriage, but turned toward hell if they are pro adultery. And whatever the form of a person's mind is like, his spirit is like, so that is what the person is like. From these observations, it is now established that adulteries of this degree are laid to your account according to your confirmations of them. Mhm. Who is next?
I can read.
Mhm.
Adulteries of the fourth level are intentional adulteries committed by people who represent them as lawful, acceptable, and not even worth intellectual consideration. The source of these adulteries distinguishes them from previous ones. These adulteries originate in distorted will inborn in a person, in other words, in a bad heredity which the person blindly obeys after his judgment is formed, forming no opinion about whether they are evils or not. So we say that he does not think that they require intellectual consideration. However, adulteries called rationalized adulteries originate in a distorted intellect, and they are done by those who confirm that adulteries are not sinful evils. In these people, intellect takes the the lead, and the others will does. In the natural world, these two distinctions do not appear to a person at all, but they are obvious to angels in the spiritual world. In that world, everyone is generally sorted out by the evils that originally spring from will or from intellect and are accepted and taken to oneself. In hell, people are also separated according to those evils. They're the ones who are intellectually evil, live in front, and are called Satans. But but can you turn the page?
But
But the ones who are evil and will live in pack and are
I think
called
it's I think
devils.
it's about ones who are evil in will. Yeah, like
Will, yeah,
to be
will,
evil in will. Mhm.
yeah. The word speaks of Satans and devils on account of this general difference. In those evil spirits, including adulterers called Satans, intellect takes the lead, and in the ones called devils, will takes the lead. But the difference can be explained so as to be seen intellectually only if the differences between will and intellect are already known, and the way will forms and your mind through through intellect and intellect forms it through will is explained. A knowledge of these things would provide light for reason to see the differences mentioned above, but the job would take a whole sheet of paper.
Mhm. Uh, who wants to read next section? 493.
I read.
Mhm.
The adulteries that these people commit are the most serious and are attributed to them as a purposeful evils, and they adhere as guilt. They are more serious and worse than the former ones. Because we'll take the in them. But the intellect leads in the former, and a person's life has to do with his will essentially and his intellect in the form his will takes. The reason is that will acts in unison with love, and love is the essence of a person's life. Will takes form in intellect through things that agree with it. So, intellect in its own right is nothing other than the form that will takes. And since love has to do with will and wisdom with intellect, wisdom is nothing other than a form that love takes. Similarly, truth is nothing other than a form that good takes. What flows from this very essence of person's life, that is, from his will or love, is mainly called a concept. But what flows from the form of his life, that is, from intellect and its thought, is called the application. Also, guilt mainly applies to your will. This is why they say that the guilt for someone's evil is
Is called to the application in this sense.
application.
In this sense, it's like
Application.
Uh,
statement or application program like this, like purpose. Right, it's called to the application. Okay, I don't understand what does it mean. It's called the application in this sense. It's like maybe like addition, maybe like this. For someone civil is
Evil is from heredity, but the evil is from the person. So adulteries of the fourth degree are blameworthy as purposeful evils and are beset. Is it beset? Beset with guilt?
beset.
Is
Beset.
it beset or beset?
Beset.
Beset.
Beset is like besiege, surround. Mhm.
Beset.
Uh, and beset with guilt. It's like it's predicate. I mean, two words predicate here. You see, because yeah, because are here is auxiliary verb, and beset is the third form of verb. The verb. It's like one predicate. I beset with guilt. It's irregular verb. Beset, I think. I
Okay.
beset with guilt. Thank you. Adulteries of the third and fourth level are sinful wrongs to the extent and in the way that intellect and will are involved in them, whether actually committed or not. Rationalized or intellectual adulteries, which are of the third degree, and adulteries of will, which are of the fourth degree, are more serious and consequently are sinful wrongs, according to the kind of intellect and will in them. You can see this from the discussion of them above. This is because a person is a person by reason of his will and intellect, for not only all the things he does in his mind, but also all the things he does in his body come from will and intellect. Who does not know that a body does not act on its own initiative, but will acts through a body, and that a mouth does not speak by itself, but thought speaks through the mouth? So if will were removed, action would stop at once, and if thought were removed, your vocal speech would stop at once. It is quite evident from this that adulteries that are actually committed are serious according to how much and what kind of intellect and will is involved in them. The Lord's words establish that they are serious in the same way when not actually committed. The ancients said, "Do not commit adultery," but I tell you that whoever looks at someone else's woman in a longing way has already committed adultery with her in his heart. To commit adultery in your heart is to commit it in your will. There are many motives that make an adulterer not an adulterine act, and yet in will and intellect. For there are those who abstain from adulteries as far as the act goes from fear of civil law and its penalties, for fear of damage to their reputation and dignities due to it. Dignities. It's like fate. No,
Dignities.
it's like honor. Dignities. Dignities. It's like pride, honor, respect, dignities, virtue, nobility, dignities. Due to it, for fear of diseases from adulteries, for fear of trouble at home from the wife resulting in unquiet life, for fear of vengeance by the husband or in laws, and by the same the husband or in laws. What is in laws?
In-laws.
Mm-hmm.
Your
Okay.
spouse's family.
Say it again.
Your spouse's family
Uh,
members.
in-laws, yeah, the husband or in-laws. Mm-hmm. Ah,
Your, for
okay.
example, your wife.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Got it. The husband or in-laws, and by the same token, for fear of a beating by the servants because of poverty, of stinginess.
Stinginess.
Stinginess. It's like greedy, I think. Stinginess. Because of poverty or stinginess, because of weakness, stemming from disease.
Stemming.
Stemming, it's like resulting. Because of weakness stemming from disease, burnout, age, or impotency, and the shame of it. If someone restrains himself from actually committing adultery for these reasons and others like them, and yet is for them in will and intellect, he is still an adulterer. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. If someone doesn't do adulteries, but he wills it, he is he is still an adulterer. Mhm, in this sense.
Interesting.
Hmm. For he believes no less that they are not sins, and in his spirit he does not make them unlawful before God, and so he commits them in spirit, though not physically before the world. So after death, when he becomes a spirit, he openly speaks in favor of them. Mhm. Who is next? Who wants to read?
Okay, I'll read. Adulteries by willful purpose and adulteries by intellectual conviction make people worldly, sense-oriented, and physical-minded. A person is a person and is different from an animal, in that his mind is in three separate regions, the same number as the heavens, and in that it can be raised from the lowest region into the higher one, and also from that into the highest, and thus become an angel of one of the heavens, even the third one. For that purpose, a person has the ability to raise his intellect all the way there. But if the love of his will is not raised at the same time, he does not become spiritual, but stays worldly. Nonetheless, he retains his ability to raise his intellect.
It retains, like, remain.
Retains,
Retains.
maintains, preserves.
Maintains, retains.
Like you use a retainer to keep your teeth straight.
Mm-hmm. Retains
Yeah,
his ability to raise his intellect.
yeah. The reason why he retains it is so he can be reformed, for you are reformed through understanding. This happens through thinking about good and truth and through rational intuition from it. If he rationally pays attention to those thoughts and lives by them, then the love of his will is raised at the same time. And in that degree, his humanity is completed and he becomes more and more human. It works out differently if he does not live by the thoughts about good and truth. Then the love of his will stays worldly and his intellect becomes spiritual off and on, for it raises itself like an eagle by turns and looks down at what belongs to his love below. When it sees this, it flies down to it and joins itself to it. And so, if bodily desires are its love, it comes down to them from its height and enjoys itself with the pleasures of them. And again, with an eye to public opinion, intellect soars again in order to be thought wise and so up and down by turns, as we just said. Adulterers of the third and fourth level, the ones who have made themselves adulterers by willful purpose and intellectual confirmation, are quiet, worldly, and become more and more sense-oriented and physical. This is because they have immersed the love of their will and at the same time their intellect in foul things having to do with their illicit love and have enjoyed them the way unclean birds and animals enjoy as delicacies and dainties things that are rotten and filthy. For the fumes rising up from their flesh fill their mind's dwelling place with their dense odors and make their will find nothing more fine and dainty. These are the ones who become physically minded spirits after death, and the unclean, hellish, and ecclesiastical things mentioned above. Can you search
Dainty.
dainty?
Dainty.
It's like delicacy.
Delicacy.
Mhm.
This,
Mentioned above.
Love well up
Well,
from them.
mhm. Who is next? Mhm. The worldly person has three levels. People who love only the world, setting their hearts on wealth, belong to the first level. These are appropriately called the worldly. Those who love only sensual pleasures, setting their hearts on all kinds of luxuries and pleasures, belong to the second level. They are appropriately called the sensual. Those who love only themselves, setting their hearts on seeking status, belong to the third level. These are appropriately called the physical because they submerge in their bodies. Submerge.
Submerge.
It's like immerse, plunge, deep. Go underwater, submerge. They submerge in their bodies everything that has to do with their desire and therefore their intellect, and they see themselves reflected in others, and strictly or strictly, strictly, yeah? Mhm.
Strictly.
Strictly, precisely, strictly. Picking love only what is their own, but the sensual ones think everything related to their inclinations and therefore their intellect in the charms and deceits of the senses, indulging only in these things. The worldly, however, think second, deceit, charms, sense, indulging. I forgot what is indulging. Indulging.
Indulging.
Indulging. It's like this word.
Pondering.
Pondering. Pondering. Only in these things. The worldly, however, think everything having to do with their inclinations and therefore their intellect in the world, grabbing for wealth with greed and cheating and seeing no use in it or from it except having it. The adulteries named above turn people degenerate on these levels. Degenerate.
Degenerate.
Degenerate. Degenerate. hmm It's like It's like many idiot like this degenerate.
Degenerate.
Turn people degenerate on these levels. One on one level, another on another, each in keeping with the satisfying pleasure that gives him his character.
Character.
Character?
Mm-hmm.
Character.
Thank you. Character. Mhm. Uh, who wants to read? Maybe can you read? Next section. For 497 section. Can you read?
Who?
You.
You?
Me?
Because
Okay.
because you
Do
are
you want
like
to read?
newcomer.
Okay. So much so that these people finally reject everything having to do with the church and religion. Adulterers on purpose and by confirmation reject everything that has to do with the church and religion because married love and adulterous love are opposites, and married love acts at one with the church and religion. Number 130 and everywhere else in the part 1. So adulterous love acts at one with things that are against the church. Because it is opposite.
This.
Yeah, me?
Go on. Yeah, it's your section to read.
These adulterers cast away from themselves everything having to do with the church and its religion, because married love and adulterous love are opposites, just as the marriage of good and truth is opposite to a marriage of evil and falsity. And a marriage of good and truth is the church, but a marriage of evil and falsity is anti-church. These adulterers cast away from themselves everything that has to do with the church and religion, because married love and adulterous love are opposites like heaven and hell. And love for everything having to do with the church is in heaven, but hatred against everything having to do with the church is in hell. These adulterers also cast away from themselves everything that has to do with the church and religion, because their pleasures start in the flesh and are fleshly even in spirit. And flesh is against spirit, that is, spiritual things of the church. This is why the pleasures of illicit love are called foolish pleasures.
Go on, because your section before 498.
Okay, go back to this page. Okay. If you want proof, please go to those who you know are adulterers like that and privately ask them what they think about God, church, and eternal life, and you shall hear. Naturally, the reason is that just as married love opens the inner reaches of your mind and thus raises them above the sensory aspects of your body, all the way to the light and heat of heaven, adulterous love, on the other hand, closes the inner reaches of your mind and, as far as your will goes, drags your mind itself down into your body until it is taken over by all the desires of your body's flesh. And the deeper it drags your mind down, the farther it takes it from heaven.
Thank you very much. Your reading is very well. Is English your first language?
Yes.
Yeah, it's I see it. It's very good to listen to your reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who wants to read next section? 498.
I can read if no one wants.
Mm-hmm.
Wait,
Go ahead.
it's it's not full screen. Wait, give me. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. They still flourish. Mm-hmm. Do you see? For 498.
There's a problem on my screen. I can't full screen. Okay, now it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they still flourish in human rationality like anyone else. The worldly, sense-oriented, and physical person is just as reasonable intellectually as a spiritual person. This has been demonstrated to me by Satans and devils rising up from hell, with permission and talking with angelic spirits in the world of spirits. These things are mentioned here and there in the stories, but the will's love makes the person and it draws intellect into agreement. So that kind of people are rational only in a state where they are removed from their will's love. But when they return to this love, they are less reasonable than wild animals. And in any case, a person without the ability to raise his intellect above his will's love would not be a person but an animal. For an animal does not enjoy that ability, he consequently would not be able to choose anything and do what is good by choice, so he could not be reformed and led to heaven and live forever. For this reason, adulterers on purpose and by confirmation are as fully gifted as others in understanding or rationality, even though they are quite worldly, sense-oriented and physical. But they do not enjoy this rationality when involved in the sensibility of adultery and think and talk about it
Sensuality
from that
involved in the sensuality. You
Yes,
said
I
this
agree with you.
sensuality of sorry in the sensuality of adultery and think and talk about it from that standpoint. The reason is that then their flesh
What
is
is this
acting on their
Bible of something?
spirit and not
Sorry, what?
What book is it? The
It's
Bible.
it's Love and Marriage by Manuel
Ah,
Swedenborg. You can see
yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
book.
I know it. I know.
Do you know this writer, Swedenborg,
No, no, not
Emmanuel?
really.
Uh, okay.
Robert
Mm-hmm.
the reason is
Curios.
that their flesh is acting on their spirit and not their spirit in their flesh. But note that after death, they finally become stupid. Not that the ability to be wise is taken from them, but they do not want to be wise since it displeases them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Who is next? Section 499. Who wants to read? Mm-hmm. But do you want to read?
No, no, you can read.
I can read. I can
Yeah,
read.
go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, a little bit coughing. But they use that rationality in outward activities, yet abuse it inwardly. They are in their outer role when they speak in public or in a group, but in their inner role when at home by themselves. Try it if you want. Take someone like and that someone of their order called Jesuit, for
What?
example, and have him, yes,
Jesuit, yeah? Jesuit, how to
Jesuit,
pronounce it?
Jesuit.
Jesuit.
Jesuit, Jesuit, for example, and have him talk in a group or teach in church about God, holy matters of the church, and about heaven and how, and he will sound like a more rational zealot than anyone
Zealot.
else. Zealot. Oh, thank you, thank you. Zealot than anyone else. He might even move you to seek, seek,
Side.
seek,
Side.
sigh, and tears
What is
over
it? Size? Size like.
Like,
Ah,
the box.
okay.
Size.
Thank you.
I mean, holy
Grown.
thing. And tears over salvation, but take him home, praise him above the other orders, call him the father of wisdom, and make yourself a friend until he opened his heart. Yes. And you will hear what he will pronounce about God, Holy Church matters, and heaven and hell then, namely that these things are fantasies and slates, slates. So they are traps for souls' bonds, with which they seize and tie the great and small, the rich and poor, and hold them in their power. These observations are enough to show what it means that worldly people, even the physically minded, flourish in rationality like anyone else.
What is
Anyone else. Ah,
slate?
slate.
Slights.
Ah, slides.
Slide.
It's slides.
Slights.
It's like chick.
Oh, dexterity.
Dexterity.
Dexterity. Dexterity.
Slate.
Like
Okay.
anyone else.
And that they use rationality in outward activities, but abuse it inwardly, consequent, consequently, consequently, one is not to be judged.
Consequently.
Consequently, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, one is not to be judged by any of the wisdom he speaks, except together with the wisdom of his life.
Consequently.
Consequently.
It's like what? It's like because, yeah? Therefore. Because.
Yeah, as a result. Mm-hmm.
Result. Thank you. Who is next? Who wants to read next section? 500. 500 section. Nobody wants to read? Okay.
Your voice is kind of low. Psychic.
Previous reader, yeah? His voice, yeah? The
Okay,
voice
I'll
of
read.
previous reader.
If you're not reading.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
add the following story to these remarks. Once in the world of spirits, I heard a big uproar. Thousands were gathered together shouting, "They ought to be punished! They ought to be punished!" I went closer and asked, "What's this?" Someone separate from the huge crowd said to me, "They are in a burning rage against three ministers going around denouncing adulterers everywhere, saying that adulterers have no knowledge of God and that to them heaven is closed and hell open, and that in hell adulterers are filthy devils because from a distance there they look like pigs rolling in manure, and the angels of heaven detest them." "Where are those ministers?" I asked, "and why such an outcry over that?" He answered, "The three ministers are among them, guarded by bodyguards, and it's a crowd who think adulteries aren't sins and say that adulterers God as much as acknowledge God as much as those who stick with their wives. They're all from the Christian world, and some angels visited to see how many their believed adulteries or sins. They didn't find 100 in a thousand, and he told me he hears what the other 900 say about adulteries. Who doesn't know that the joy of adultery overtops the joy of marriage? That adulterers are always hot, so they have a more lively, industrious, and active life than those who live with only one woman. And that love with a married partner cools, on the other hand, sometimes to the point where at last hardly one word of
Industrious. It's like
Industrious.
diligent, hardworking,
diligent, hardworking,
diligent,
enterprising, industrious. It's like about industry.
one word of speech and companionship survives. It's different with prostitutes. The deadliness of life with a wife coming from lack of potency is remade and brought back to life by illicit sex. Isn't something that remakes and revives worth more than something that deadens? What's marriage but licensed sexual love? Who knows the difference? Can love be forced, and yet love with a wife is forced by the vows and laws? Isn't love with a
How did you read this word?
deadliness?
Maybe deadliness. Maybe deadliness.
Deadliness.
Deadliness. Yeah, you're correct. I thought it's like deadliness. Deadliness. Dead.
Yeah, deadliness.
Isn't
Love with
isn't
a espouse sexual love and so common that the birds and animals have it? What's married love but sexual love? And sexual love is free with every woman. The civil laws are against adulteries because the lawmakers thought it would be for the public good, and yet the lawmakers themselves and the judges sometimes commit adultery and say to each other, "He who is without sin can cast the first stone." Only
simple-minded.
simple-minded and religious people think adulteries are sins, not intelligent people who, like us, look at them in natural light. Aren't children born of adulteries the same as children of marriages? Aren't illegitimates just as fit and useful for duty and employment as legitimates? Besides, it provides families for people who are otherwise without children. Isn't this a benefit and not an injury? What does it hurt a wife to accept several suitors?
Suitors are like spouses. Yeah,
Suitor.
suitors.
Like the people who want to
Suitors.
be with you romantically.
Yeah. Thank you.
Suitors.
Suitors.
And what does it hurt the man? It's a worthless and imaginary opinion that this shames a man. That adultery is against the laws and statutes of the church is due to the uh, ecclesiastical order and on account of power. Sorry, what?
Ecclesiastical.
Can you say it again? Ecclesiastical order.
Yeah, you're a robot. I don't hear you. Maybe because of your Wi-Fi connection. No, it's not. Can anybody hear him or not? or maybe it's my troubles.
No, no,
Oh,
no. We have to read.
yeah.
But what do theological and Hello?
You, I think you lose
Can
your connection,
can you hear me?
Wi-Fi connection.
Can you hear me?
No, it was not
I
understandable.
think you need to
Maybe.
turn off your noise suppression.
Mhm. Can you
How about now?
reread it from that? Because
That
it was
adultery
like
is
a robot.
against the laws. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
okay.
That adultery is against the laws and statutes of the church is due to the can you say this again? Ecclesiastical
Ecclesiastic. Mhm.
ecclesiastical order on account of power, but what do theological and spiritual things have to do with a purely physical and fleshly pleasure? There are priests and monks like that, aren't there? Does it keep them from accepting and worshipping God? So why do those three preach that adulterers don't accept God? We won't allow such blasphemies. They all have to be judged and punished. Then I saw them call judges. They asked them to sentence the three to punishment, but the judges said, that is not a job for us, since it has to do with accepting God with sin, so it's a matter of salvation and damnation. These things are judged from heaven, but we'll advise you how you can find out if the three ministers have preached true things. We judges know of three places where things like this are investigated and disclosed in a remarkable way. In one place, a road to heaven is visible to everyone, but when they enter heaven, they find out what they themselves are like as far as accepting God goes. There is a second place where a road to heaven is also visible, but no one can get on the road except those who have heaven in themselves. And there is a third place where there is a road to hell, and people who love hellish things get on that road willingly because it makes them happy. We judges send to those places everyone that wants us to pass judgment about heaven and hell. When they heard this, the crowd said, let's go to those places. On the way to the first place where a road to heaven is visible to everyone, it suddenly became dark, so some of them lit torches and carried them in front. The judges will said, this happens to everyone on the way to the first place, but the flames of the little torches get dimmer as they come close. And at the place they go out, due to the light of heaven falling on it, this is a sign that they are there. The reason is that heaven is closed to them at first and opened later. They arrived at the place, and when the torches went out by themselves, they saw a road stretching up into the sky at an angle. The ones who were in a burning rage against the ministers got on the road. The ones who were purposeful adulterers among the first, and after them the confirmed adulterers on the way up, the ones in front shouted, come on, and the ones following shouted, hurry up, and pushed forward. In a little while, when they were all inside a community of heaven, a chasm appeared between them and the angels and the chasm,
Chasm.
chasm,
Chasm. 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 Like a abyss.
chasm, gap, okay. A chasm appeared between them and the angels, and light of heaven above the chasm exposed the inner reaches of their minds by flowing into their eyes. So they had to say exactly what they were thinking inside. And then angels questioned them, whether they acknowledged that God exists. The first, who were adulterers by willful purpose, answered, "What is God?" They looked around at each other and said, Has any of you seen him? The second group, who were intellectually confirmed adulterers, said, Everything is part of nature, isn't it? What's above nature besides the sun? And the angel said to them, Get away from us. Now you yourselves can tell that you have no acknowledgement of God. When you go back down, the inner parts of your minds will close and the outer parts will open. And then you will be able to speak against the things inside and say that God exists. Believe it, as soon as a person becomes an actual adulterer, heaven is close to him. When heaven is close, God is not acknowledged. Listen to the reason why. All the filth of hell comes from adulteries, and in heaven this stinks like putrid filth in the streets. When they heard this, they turned and went down along 3 rows, and when they were down below, the first and second groups, talking among themselves, said, The ministers got the better of us there, but we know we can talk about God as well as they can. And when we say that we exist, that He exists, don't we not acknowledge Him? The inner and outer parts of your mind that the angels told about are something they dreamed up. But let's go to the second place. The Judges described where a road to heaven is open to those who have heaven in them, which is those who are about to go to heaven. When they came near there, a voice went out from heaven. Shut the gates. There are adulterers around here. The gates were closed at once, and guards with nightsticks in their hands drove them away. The bodyguards released from custody the 3 ministers that the this
What is it?
nightsticks, like the guards that have those sticks that stand.
Mm-hmm. Right. Nightsticks. And what is custody? From custody. Custody like guardianship. Guardianship. Mhm. Storage.
Yeah.
Safekeeping. Custody. 3 ministers that the
Ministers that the
disturbance.
disturbance was against, and they brought them into heaven. And as soon as the gates were opened for the ministers, the joy of marriage breathed out of heaven on the rebels, which almost took their breath away, because it was chaste and pure. Is it chaste or chaste? Chaste.
Chaste.
So for fear of passing out from suffocation, they hurried to the third place, where the judges said the road to hell started, and then the joy of adultery breathed from it, which revived the purposeful adulterers and the confirmed adulterers so much that they went down fairly dancing and plunged into the filth there like pigs.
Thank you. Next chapter is 22. Last for defloration. It's a very interesting chapter. Who wants to read? Okay, I will read. The last that the next 4 chapters deal with are not just lust for adultery, but worse because they are only their own account of adulteries, since they are taken up after adulteries, become law loathsome. How to pronounce it? Loathsome. Loathsome.
Loathsome.
Loathsome. Loathsome. Like disgusting. Like lust for defloration, to be dealt with first, which cannot begin in someone before that stage, and similarly, lust for variety, lust for rape, and lust for seducing innocent women, which are dealt with afterwards. They are called lusts because you make them your own according to how much and in what way you lust for them. The following topics in a series will clarify what specifically applies to lust for defloration to make the point clearly that it is a shameful act. A virgin's or inexperienced woman's condition before marriage and after marriage. Virginity or virginity, how to pronounce
Virginity.
it? Yeah, virginity. Virginity is the crown of chastity and a token of married love. Defloration without the goal of marriage is the shameful act of a thief. After death, the fate of those who in their own minds establish that lust for defloration is not a sinful evil is serious. An explanation of these topics follows. Mhm. Who wants to read next section 502?
I can read. I'm audible now.
Yeah, go ahead.
A virgin's or inexperienced woman's condition before marriage and after marriage. Lives in the spiritual world showed me clearly by the example of women there who left the natural world in childhood and were brought up in heaven. What a virgin's state is, like before, she's taught them many things that have to do with the beginning of marriage. They said that when they reached a married, marriageable state, they began to love married life by seeing married partners, but only so as to be called wives and to have friendly and trusting companionship with one man, and also have their own rights away from the obedience of home. And they said they thought about marriage only for the happiness of shared friendship and trust with the male partner, and absolutely not for the allurement of any passion. And after their wedding, that uh, that virginal state was changed into a new one that they had known nothing about before. And they said this state is a state of expansion of everything in their bodily life, from first to last, to receive what their husband gives them and unite their life with it, to become his loving wife. And they said this state was started by the moment of defloration, or is it defloration? I don't know. Okay, moment of defloration, and after the
Defloration.
defloration,
Defloration.
the moment of defloration, and after the flame of love burned only for their husband, and the delights of this expansion felt heavenly. And because a woman was led into the state by her husband, and because it came from him, and so it is in her, she certainly could not help loving him alone. These remarks make it clear what a virgin state is like before marriage and after marriage in heaven. It's no secret that virgins and wives on earth who are married as virgins are the same. What virgin can know that new state before she is in it? Ask and you'll hear. It's different with those who learn about allurement before marriage.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Who is next? Section 503. Who wants to read? Mm-hmm. Virginity is the crown of chastity and a token of married love. Virginity is called the crown of chastity because virginity crowns the chastity of marriage and is a sign of a chastity as well. This is why a wife wears a crown on her head at a wedding. It is also a sign of marriage's holiness. For after a bride gives and consecrates to the bridegroom, then a husband the bloom. What is bloom of her virginity? Bloom. Bloom. It's like blossoming, flowering. Bloom. The bloom of her virginity she gives and consecrates herself to him, and the husband gives himself to his bride in turn. Virginity is also called a token of married love because it is in the agreement. The agreement is that married love is to join them into one person or into one flesh. Before the wedding, even the men themselves regard the bride's virginity as the crown of her chastity and the token of married love, and as precisely the delicacy where the joy of that love. How to pronounce delicacy? Sorry.
Delicacy.
Delicacy. It's like any. It's about food. No, it's delicacies. No, it's like tenderness. Yeah, tenderness.
We normally.
Sorry, your voice is breaking. You're like a robot, too. Can you repeat? Say that again.
No.
No, I don't hear you because maybe your Wi-Fi connection. Delicacy, where the joy of that love is to begin and last forever. These facts and the preceding ones establish that after her hymen, what is it? Hymen. Hymen. Okay, it's like a medical term. Hymen is taken and her virginity tested. A virgin becomes a wife, and if not a wife, a prostitute. For the new state that she is let into then is a state of love for her man, and if not for her man, it is a state of sexual desire. Who is next? Section 504.
No one else is reading. I'll read.
Go ahead.
Defloration without the goal of marriage is the shameful act of a thief. Some adulterers have desired to deflower virgins, and therefore also girls at an innocent age. Virgins are enticed into things like that either by the persuasion of madams or gifts from men, or promises of marriage, and the men abandon them after the defloration and search for more and more others. Add to this that they are not interested in past victims, but ever new ones, and this desire grows to be the height of their physical pleasure. And they add to these things this villainy that by different villainy.
It's like wickedness, villainy.
Atrocity.
Villainy.
That by different crafty tricks they entice virgins that are about
victims. I forgot this word.
About to victim.
Victims. Sacrifice like this. Victim of violence. Victims.
Someone, yeah.
that are about
that are
to
about to be married or are just married to bestow on them the first fruits of marriage, which they disgracefully defile in this way. I have also heard that when that lust fails, together with its potency, they glory in their number of virginities, as so many golden fleeces of Jason. This shameful act violation remains enrooted and thus engrafted after death, because it is begun at a vigorous age and is reinforced later by
vigorous.
vigorous.
It's like strong.
Means strong.
hmm And fleeces. It's like sheep wool
I
fleeces. Yeah.
don't
hmm
know that
hmm And
releases. Reinforced later by bestow, like
yeah, what is it? Stop.
offer or something. Give, yeah.
Grant. Okay, reinforced later by
Later
boasting.
by boasting. The dimensions of this shameful act emerge from what was said above, that virginity is the crown of chastity, a token of married love to come, and that the virgin who bestows it on a man bestows her soul and life on him. Also, the friendship of marriage and its trust are founded on it. And also, the woman deflowered by someone like that loses her modesty. After this entrance to married love has been broken through and
Deflowered is like
becomes a,
it's about flowers or
it's
defloration.
it's no, it's about a woman
Okay.
who loses her virginity,
Yeah, yeah. But it's like the same
Yeah,
root like flowers, yeah? Flowers or not?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, this word. Okay. Got
yeah,
it.
but it means different, yeah, and becomes
Mm-hmm.
a harlot. The ravisher is also the cause of this. If these thieves themselves, after enacting these sexual excesses and profanations of chastity, turn their minds to marriage, they have in mind only the virginity of their married partner to be. After they have tried to After they have tried it, they loathe bed and bedroom, the whole feminine sex, in fact, except girls. And clearly divine justice pursues such people.
To the ravisher. Ravisher. It's like
Ravisher.
it's like rapist. Rapist. Ravisher.
Ah, okay. Such people,
Pursues such people.
because they are violators of marriage with contempt for the feminine sex, and in this way, they are spiritual thieves.
Thank you. Who is next? Oh. Okay. After death, the fate of those who in their own minds establish that lust for defloration is not a sinful evil is serious. Here is what happens to them when they have gone through the first period of the world of spirits. It is a period of modesty and morality, because it is spent in company with angelic spirits. They are brought from their external life into their inner life, and then they have the same lusts that enticed them in the world, to see what level the lusts were on, so that if the lusts oh no to see what level the lusts were on, so that if the lusts were on a lesser level, the people can be taken away from them after being introduced to them and be full of shame. But the ones who enjoyed this weekend passion to the extent that they found outstanding joy in it and took pride in these thefts as in rich spoils, will not let themselves be led away from it. So they are released in freedom, and right away they go around looking for brothels, and when these are pointed out to them, they go. The brothels are at the sides of hell, but when they find only prostitutes there, they go away and ask where there are virgins, and then they are led to prostitutes who by illusion can represent themselves as outstandingly beautiful with the blushing charm of girls and pass themselves off as virgins. The men burn for them the same as in the world. So they bargain. What is it? Bargain?
Bargain.
Bargain. Mhm. Bargain is like contract, trade deal,
Bargain.
bargain. So they bargain with these women. But when they are about to go through with the bargain, heaven takes away the illusion, and then those virgins appear in all their ugliness. Ugliness.
Ugliness.
Ugliness. Ugliness. It's like disgrace. Ugliness.
Ugliness.
In all their ugliness, deformed and dark. Still, the men are compelled to stay with them for a short time. These prostitutes are called sirens. Maybe sirens. Sirens.
Sirens.
Sirens. Sirens. Compelled. Compelling, like this.
Compelled.
Enforced. Compelled. But if the men do not allow themselves to be led away from the insane passion by enchant, enchantments, enchantments, enchantments,
Enchantments.
enchantments like charm, sorcery, magic, enchantments like these, they are driven down into hell on the border between south and west under the hell of the more cunning prostitutes and are gathered together with their kind. I was even able to see the spirits in that hell, and I was told that there are many there of noble lineage. Noble lineage.
Lineage.
Lineage. It's like kinship line, lineage. Noble lineage and from wealthy families. But since they were what they were in the world, all memory of lineage and self-respect due to wealth is taken away from them, and they are convinced that they were vile slaves. Vile. What is it?
Vile.
It's like horrible. Mhm. Heinous.
Heinous.
Heinous. Vile.
Vile.
Vile. Vile slaves, and for that reason not worthy of any respect. Among themselves they do look like humans, but to others who are allowed to look in there, they look like apes with a savage face instead of seductive. Seductive.
Seductive.
Tempting. Seductive. Of a seductive one and a frightful expression. Frightful. What is it?
Frightful.
It's like frighten. Frighten. Terrible. Frightful. Expression instead of a suave face. What is it? Suave.
Suave.
Suave. Suave.
Suave.
It's like gentle, polite in this word.
Courteous.
Courteous.
Suave.
Suave. Instead of a suave face. Suave face. They walk with their groins. Groins.
Groins.
Groins. It's like
Inguinal region.
inguinal region. Groins. Tucked. Tucked in.
Tucked.
Tucked. It's like clumped.
Clamped.
Clumped. In which bends them with their upper part leaning. Bends.
Bends.
Bends. It's like turn. Bends them with their upper part leaning forward as if they are about to fall. And they stink. They loathe the other sex and turn away. Loathe.
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 Loathe. Like this. It's like hate. They loathe the other sex and turn away from females that they see because they have no desire. This is how they look close up, but from a distance, they look like lap dogs or favorite puppies.
Puppies.
Dogs. Puppies.
Puppies.
It's like baby dogs. Like
Yeah.
lap dogs. What is lap dogs? Lap dogs.
Lap dogs.
It's little dogs like lap dogs. My favorite puppies. And there is also something like barking heard in their voices. Yeah, we finished this chapter and next chapter I think this reading is over because my brain is tired.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah, I
sticking
have
for
to
so
go.
long. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
nice.
Was it interesting to read?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, have a nice
Goodbye.
day or night. Yeah, take care.
Yeah. See you. Goodbye.
Take care, guys.